Knowing how to spend your life is hard. And if you're lucky enough to actually know what you want to do with your life, you have to put the work in to make it happen. But let's say you do put the work in. What if it doesn't happen? Despite all your best efforts, what if it doesn't happen? Can we be okay with that? This is a question I think about a lot, and I don't think I'll be the only one. Because although it's really important to me that I spend my life doing what I love, which is filmmaking, photography, writing, art, it's more important that I spend my life feeling satisfied, feeling proud, and feeling happy. But I don't know if I can be all those things if ultimately I have failed to do what I love. Right now I'm young and I don't do what I love for a living, but I can look at the future with some hope that the work I'm putting in will pay off in the end, and I can find some peace in that. But it is peace with a caveat, with an asterisk, and in the small print it says, but one day you won't be young. One day you won't have that future ahead of you where all that work pays off. One day it'll all be behind you. And if you're still not doing what you love, can you find peace then? How will you find peace then? And that brings me to scaffolding. Scaffolding is perfect. Other perfect things include pallets, butterfly tin openers, key rings, quill felt stoppers. But why are these objects perfect? Why am I obsessed with scaffolding? And how does this relate to anything I've talked about so far? Well, I'm not exactly sure when this obsession started, but I have always been drawn to the look and the function of scaffolding. And I think the reason that scaffolding interests me so much is what it represents for me. For me, it's a perfect visual metaphor for modern lives, for our attitudes towards ourselves and what gives our existence meaning. To most of us, scaffolding only has value in that it leaves something behind, something long-lasting, sometimes beautiful, it leaves behind. And I think this attitude to scaffolding mirrors pretty much exactly our attitudes towards ourselves and our lives. Human lives are often only seen as meaningful according to what they leave behind. But can we consider scaffolding beautiful in itself? Even if it leaves nothing behind? Can we consider ourselves beautiful, even if we fail to leave something behind? I want to say, of course we can. We're all beautiful in and of ourselves, regardless of any external factors. The beauty and the meaning is all inside. That's how we find peace. The scaffolding is beautiful on its own. But I think that things are a bit more difficult because one of the major reasons why I admire scaffolding as well as those other perfect objects I mentioned earlier, is all tied up in my respect for how perfectly they perform their functions. That's a big reason why they are perfect, beautiful objects. It's all tied up in their work. I just finished this book called The Beauty of Everyday Things by a Japanese philosopher called Suetsu Yanagi, and he gives a similar sentiment regarding the beauty found in traditional anonymous Japanese craftsmanship such as karatsu stoneware or bashofu fabrics. I think his description, I really found it quite applicable to the beauty I see in scaffolding. In this beauty there is neither inordinate colour nor notable decoration. They contain no intellectual ambitions or attempts to be stylish. There is not the least effort to surprise or astonish, no straining to overachieve or striving for a particular form. They are simply quiet, calm and tranquil. They cannot be fragile, lavishly decorated or intricately made. Such objects will not do. Perfected in its design, it's nobly sacrificed itself for millennia to some of the greatest feats of human creation. Similar to Yanagi's reflections on Japanese folk crafts, scaffolding's beauty is interlinked with its work. I guess I look at scaffolding and I see it, I give it a soul somehow, and I see it making this sacrifice towards something greater, something outside of itself. And this is exactly what we are encouraged to do as well. To truly live a life of value, we can't just rely on the inherent value of the self and our own existence. That isn't enough for us. We have to serve a higher cause. That's what we're kind of told in modern society, modern Western society. And for me, as someone trying to make a career in the arts, specifically in filmmaking and photography, I have to say that I am very sympathetic to this idea. It's very convincing. Yes, I must sacrifice my life fanatically, like a servant, to the great cause of my art. That's a quite commonly held belief amongst artists, I think, and it is very convincing. And, you know, I listen to someone like Jeremy Strong speak about his devotion to acting, and I find myself nodding along, like, yeah, that is the most beautiful way, the most noble way you can spend your life.
I guess I feel a deep sense of responsibility, because that's my aim, is to be part of and serve something that might have the chance to be real art. I have to feel like I'm putting everything on this altar, and then at a certain point, you just hope that it catches fire.
De gården am werden et langt skrif fra kunstnernes hjerte. Giv meg leilighet til at yte mitt ypperste.
One of the most affecting passages I've ever read comes from Isaac Dineson's novel, or novella, Babette's Feast. I've never cried reading a book, but this is pretty much as close as I've come, I think. It made me put the book down, and I was very overwhelmed with feeling. Chances are it's probably moved Jeremy Strong as well, because he's probably fucking read it. Through all the world there goes one long cry from the heart of the artist. Give me leave to do my utmost. Even now I find that pretty gut-wrenching to read out loud. It makes me want to, get on my knees and beg for the chance to give everything I have to art, to spend my life dedicated to that greater cause. So I do understand this desire to dedicate one's life to something bigger than oneself. And from that one can live this noble, beautiful life. If you leave behind a body of work, it gives value to your life. And I see that in scaffolding when it leaves behind a church or a cathedral or whatever. But this attitude, I think, is also quite a dangerous one, especially for young people who have so much uncertainty about the life they have ahead of them. it brings up a lot of very scary questions. What if I don't manage to make what I want to make? What if I don't get the chance to leave behind something great? What if I don't get the chance to do my utmost? The implications are scary. I find myself trying to reconcile this very difficult problem with myself. How can I strive towards a higher purpose while being content if I fall short of it? Can I see the scaffolding as beautiful in itself, even if it leaves nothing behind? If so, then I have to be able to find beauty within myself, regardless of any external factors, purely myself for what it is. But another thing I think about a lot, what even is myself? Is it really possible to find total peace within me when I'm not even really sure if I totally believe in the concept of the self? It changes from minute to minute. I don't know. I saw this clip from a lecture by Slavoj Žižek the other day when he touches on this fallacy of trying to explain oneself, to try and understand oneself.
This obsessive desire to know yourself is in itself a pathology. The opposition of knowing yourself is not just act intuitively, it's something different. His point is, instead of probing into yourself, dedicate yourself to an external cause. You are not cured when you are satisfied, oh my God, now I can tell a complete story about myself, I know it. But when you don't matter to yourself, you fight for something. It can be progressive politics, you are a fanatical artist, scientist, politician, inventor, lover, whatever you want. But this is the point, that the goal of psychoanalysis is precisely to bring you to the point where you can finally forget about that piece of bullshit that is yourself or myself, and finally work for a cause.
He calls the self a piece of bullshit, and I get what he means.
It's that easy. It's so easy. ABM scaffolding. Get in there. Ooh.
I think that trying to find peace and happiness just within is very much tied into this kind of egotistical main character syndrome outlook on the world that a lot of us have nowadays. It's very tied up with an obsession with the importance of my story. I don't think that happiness lies just within, but I don't think happiness lies in sacrificing oneself to working for a cause, like Žižek says. So, what the fuck do I think? The closest thing I've come to in finding a solution to this is to another modern philosopher called Byung-Chul Han, who I actually came across through another YouTube video essay. Han is very interested in the damage that neoliberalism and late-stage capitalism is doing to individuals and society in general. He points out that generally the way our society functions doesn't lay the groundwork for human happiness. It basically lays the groundwork for burnout, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. But then, what does he say the solution is? A feeling of lack impels us to act. Fullness of being, that is beauty, is found in the contemplative gaze. Just like Žižek, Han compels us to find fullness of being outside of ourselves, but unlike Žižek, he doesn't want to do it through action. He doesn't want us to do it by dedicating ourselves to a cause, but through inaction, through contemplation of the world around us, the world we're part of, the world that is basically us. Then to further help explain it, he refers to the Roman genius, which is within all of us from birth to death. The genius shatters the ego's pretension to be sufficient unto itself. Its presence prevents us from enclosing ourselves within a substantial identity. In being moved by the genius, that is, being inspired, we cease to be someone encapsulated in an ego. The being born that commits us to action is without happiness. A person who does nothing but act loses the genius that inspires and gladdens. Happiness comes from inactivity. He calls this state of contemplative being vita contemplativa, and the state of active being vita activa. The obvious problem with vita contemplativa is that, well, we can't all just be inactive. But that isn't Hans' point, really. He doesn't want us all to give up activity in favour of total inactivity. He's more pointing out that we as individuals have completely lost the ability to be contemplative and to be inactive as a result of our obsession with activity and productivity. What he wants is a more balanced relationship between this vita contemplativa and vita activa, and he calls that state of being vita composita. Be aware, while a good plan for life requires that one moves from the active to the contemplative life, it is often useful if the soul returns from the contemplative to the active life, in such a way that the flame of contemplation which has been lit in the heart passes on all perfection to activity. Thus, active life must lead us to contemplation, but contemplation call us back to activity. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what I see in scaffolding. I see its inactivity and I see its activity. And it seems like it has perfected that balance. It might seem ridiculous, but I look at it and I see no ego there, and I see the perfection that it brings to its activity. And that's what I want to strive towards, while avoiding my whole self being determined by my work and my productivity. Fostering this ability to really contemplate the world around us and get out of the main character headspace that especially my generation finds themselves in is what can give us back a fullness in life that we can then apply to the work we choose to do. And I choose to make films, to write, to take photos. And I don't want to give any of those up, but I don't want them to be all that I am. They aren't all that I am. That's not where the fullness of my life comes from. The fullness comes from moments where I'm not doing anything, not being anything or anyone, simply contemplating and enjoying our inactivity. The way I see it, we need, or at least I need, to be able to see the full beauty of a scaffolding rig sat in the middle of nowhere. It could be on a mountain, it could be in a desert, it could be in the sea. It's just sitting there, not building anything, not leaving anything behind, not assuming any personality. It's just there. And if I can look at that and see the beauty, not call it an eyesore, but see how it reflects a part of myself that I've lost, the vita contemplativa, then I can see the road that I need to take towards living a more full life, where I'm not totally defined by the cause I'm working towards, but by the world I feel totally a part of. Where I can still feel justified in doing the work I do, but not placing my entire self-worth, happiness, fullness of being on whether I get the chance to maximize my potential in that field. The happiness will come from the bits in between, and then that will allow me to be in the best place to do what I like to do. That's why I'm obsessed with scaffolding. That's why it always provokes a lot of feeling in me. Even if you don't feel the same way about scaffolding specifically, which I doubt many people will, I hope a lot of you can relate to this sometimes seemingly unresolvable conflict between wanting to do your best in life, but also being fine if you don't get there. I don't think I've solved it or anything, and I still very rarely reach this state of vita contemplativa, but I am trying to apply it to my life, and I'm happier now than I was a year ago. So it is getting me somewhere.